Hello and welcome back to My Own Worst Enemy and another session of Great Battles of the American Revolution, Eutaw Springs. We are going to start turn number 2. So quick overview of the map. We had turn 1, we have moved these two forces, these two stacks went forward, and that was pretty much it. The British player does not get to move in the first 2 turns, no initiative there. So the Americans will have the initiative here. One correction I do want to make though is this stack, I only moved it 3 spaces last turn. So we started on A and I went 1, 2, 3. I think I was counting from the hex I had on back here when I was sorting through them. So really these guys ought to be 1 more space forward. We're going to just take care of that now. So they are here. The 2 Dragoon units are here. And we're going to go right into the sequence of play and start. So the first thing is the initiative. And again, the American player has the initiative on the first 2 turns. So that will not change. And then we go right into the movement phase. So let's go ahead and zoom in and look at the turn track. All right, so zoomed in here, we can see that we do have a stack of 4 units that will arrive this turn. They will show up in hex A. So that's the hex we used before. And I'm going to move those on over there. You can see on the turn track here, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. The Americans are the only side that will have movement here, and the only side that has reinforcements. So that's why that's all in blue. Turn 3, you can see it's kind of dashed because that has yet to be determined as to who has the initiative. So let's go ahead and move over to hex number A to see where these units are going to deploy. Here is hex A, so this is where these units will arrive. I'm going to put them back here though so that we can move them onto the playing field. So let's separate these out. We have a leader this time coming in. So we have a leader and we have these other 2 militia units, it looks like, coming in artillery. So let's go ahead and move the first 2 stacks first. We're now in the movement phase. Going back to the sequence of play, there would be some other things to check here, but we don't have any disrupted units, no shattered units, no pinned units. But one thing we can do this turn is use strategic movement. So that was prohibited in the first turn, but we're allowed to do that from here on out. So what I want to do with these first units though, is I want to go ahead and try to attack this forging party. I don't want the British side to have the initiative on turn 3, so we're going to try to stop this forging party. Remember that the 6 hexes surrounding that unit are zone of control for that defending unit. If I move a unit into one of these 6 hexes, they have to stop automatically. With that in mind, I think I want to take these dragoons and move them around here. I could also move them, probably have enough movement points to go up through here and come in, but I'm just going to take them around. Remember that you must move 1 at a time because of these stacking limitations. I want you to adhere to that strictly. So we'll take the first one. It's going to go 1, 2. So it's going to end up into this hex adjacent to the forging party. And it must stop movement there. And now because it's there, it must also conduct combat when we get to that point. This Lee's Legion is going to follow the same path. We're going to go 1, 2. And we'll just put this unit back on top for now. The stack behind it, let's see what's under here. Lee's Legion's under there, and we have this one on top. So we're going to move these 1, 2, 3 right into the forging party's face there. So Lee's going to move forward. This unit's going to move forward. And now we have 2 units that are going to engage with this forging party. Back up here, these units are just now coming in, and we do get to use strategic movement. Let's start with the artillery. Movement factor of 3. It starts in A. Go ahead and do that. And it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with strategic movement. This is allowed because we're not stopping adjacent to a defending enemy unit, and we're also staying on the same path, the same terrain from start to end. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then these other units, the militia unit, can move 4, 8 with strategic, but it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 because I want to keep it together with that artillery. And this Pickens Sumter unit can go 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I've got to watch out for stacking here. So that's 3 strength points. You can go up to 6. So I could stack those, but I don't think I'm going to. We're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then this is Hampton can move, let's see, what is that movement factor? A 6. So strategic would take him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we cannot enter this hex because it would be in violation of the ending adjacent to an enemy unit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He can move 6 anyway. We're just going to move him forward into this stack. So that's going to take care of movement for the American side on turn number 2. So now let's go to the sequence of play and we'll go to the next phase. So let's go ahead and we'll zoom out again real quick so we can take a look at the overall board. Okay, we're back out. So here's what we were just looking at. The British units are here, of course. Now let's go ahead and go to the next thing in the sequence of play, which is the rally phase. And remember, this is where we would do morale checks for disrupted or shattered units. We have none of that here. The next thing in the sequence of play is the defensive artillery fire, but there's no defensive artillery with that forging party. They probably wish they had some, but they don't. Next, we're going to go into rifle fire phase. We have no rifle units. Well, we do for the British, but they're back here, so they're not in range. And then we go into close combat. So this is where the battle will take place. And I'm going to grab the player's aid card for this because we're going to step through exactly how to do this. This will be our first battle, so it's a good opportunity to learn how to go through combat. So I'm going to grab the player's aid card here and the rule book, which also in the sequence of play will have the close combat sequence that we can follow along. So let's do that. Let's step through this. So the first thing to remember is that you must, if you're adjacent to an enemy unit, there must be combat. So we have to keep that in mind. So what that's going to mean here, this stack and this stack will have to attack this forging party. So he's greatly outnumbered. He's probably not going to survive, but that is the rule. And it tells you that here in the sequence of play, if you look at this, it says the facing player must attack with all of his units that are adjacent to enemy units, and all adjacent enemy units must be attacked. There are exceptions with artillery and rifled units. You have to remember that, but we have none now. All right, so the first thing we look at, it says determines the odds ratio. So let's do that. And the way that is done, you add up all of your attacking strength points, and they will go against the defender's strength points. So if we look in this stack, we have this Palmetto unit has 2 strength points, and the Lee's Legion has 1, so that's 3. And these 2 Dragoon units, or cavalry units, however you want to say this, they have 2, so each has 1, so that's 2 total. That's going to be 5 strength points. And the poor forging party has 1. And that's going to be a 5-to-1 ratio. Now I did print off, I think I got this from the GMT site because that's what it says on it, this odds table. So it just lets you look up real quick the odds ratio because this can only go up to 4-to-1. So I'm going to use that to kind of help me stay straight on these ratios. All right, so let's zoom back in on this battle. So again, we've determined the odds ratio. It's 5-to-1, but if you look at the chart, it can only be a 4-to-1. So the odds are 4-to-1 here for the attacker. Next thing we do in the close combat sequence, it says determine the lead unit. Now this is important. The attacker must pick a lead unit and the defender will pick a lead unit. And you've got to be careful here picking this because things to consider are the morale value of the unit you pick. So you'll note that here, Lee's Legion has a +1. This unit only has a 0 morale. So you're going to add that into your combat. There'll be a die roll modifier to your attack, so that's something to consider. So here's another one. Lee's Legion has a +1. But the other thing you want to consider is, 1, are they capable of moving into the terrain you're attacking into? If they are not, they cannot be a lead unit. You also want to consider that whichever unit you pick as a lead unit is going to end up in this hex if you are lucky enough to defeat the units in that hex. So you would have to consider which unit you'd want to see move forward if that were to happen. So just some things to consider when picking your lead unit. In this case, we're just going to pick Lee's Legion because it's not one of these Dragoon units, and I want to be able to move these out if we do destroy this party. I don't want them to move into this hex. I want them to just kind of keep moving along. So we're going to pick this Lee's Legion unit to be I'll just tilt that against that so we can see it. So the lead unit for the attacker will be that. It's going to give us a +1 to the close combat modifier because of his morale. For the defender, we're going to have to choose the forging party because that's the only unit there, and it's got a -1. So that's going to be the lead unit for the defender. Now we also have to consider here if there's any defending cavalry or Indian units, they could withdraw here once we've declared who our lead units are, but that's not the case. So now we're going to determine the die roll modifiers for this attack. So here we've got a +1 for the leader that we picked, this unit. So +1 to the roll. And let's see, is there anything else here for die roll? Yeah, one other thing we've got to consider is the army morale. The army morale is still high, so we started the game at high. So that's going to be no modifications at all to this die roll. If the army morale were reduced to fatigue, then of course it would be like a -1 to that. So nothing for that. And then actually on the player's aid card, it has all the close combat die roll modifiers. So let's just step down them real quick. So we've adjusted the unit morale of the attacker's lead unit. That's the +1. Close combat DRM of attacker's commanding leader. So there's no leader in this stack. If there were, say this unit were in this stack, we could add that commander's modifier to this, but we cannot do that here. Any defending unit is a rifle, we'd get a +1, but that's not a rifled unit. It's not disrupted, it's not shattered, not a mounted dragoon, and all defending units are militia attacked by at least one non-militia unit. That doesn't apply. +1 if the defender is surrounded, and +1 if the defender is in Nelson's Ferry Hex, so none of that applies. So we're going to get a +1 for the lead unit. And then you look at the defender benefits, or detriments as the case may be, as we'll see, because adjust the unit morale of the defender's lead unit. So here it says to take a minus of that value. So a -1 is going to give the attackers another +1 to the roll. So when we roll this, we'll add another +1 to the DRM. So right now we're at +2 for the total die roll modifiers for the attacker. So that's going to be it for the die roll modifiers, the DRMs, for this battle. The next thing we do is select and resolve tactics. So this is a little different, and I'm going to zoom back out here just for a second. And so if you remember, I told you this in the last video, what I'm going to use are these solitaire tactics tables that are on the GMT site, so we can have each side pick which tactic they want to use by a die roll. So that's what I'm going to do. There are these tactics cards that if you were playing someone, each side has a set, and you would pick which tactic you would want to use, show them, compare them, and get the results. So, but we're going to do it using this solitaire table and a die roll. Let's go ahead and zoom back in again. All right, and for this, we're just going to follow along the flowchart instructions. There are two options you start with. One, are you engaging without a leader or with a leader? We are engaging without a leader. This stack is engaging. This stack has no leader. So it's without a leader. So it says, is withdrawal plausible the next item? Withdrawal plausible or not? Yeah, withdrawal is possible for either of these. So it says to use table number 1. And I'll just see if I can show you table number 1 up top here. And so we're going to roll a D8. Now I do have a D8, and let's see if I can roll this on screen. And I think it'll fit. We'll try it. So we're going to roll a D8, and we will see which tactic the attacker is going to use. And I'm going to grab the cards here. So let's go ahead and roll that D8. So we rolled a 5, and according to the table, that is attack echelon. So I'm going to grab that card. Just as a reminder, attack echelon is here. We'll put it out to show that's what our attacker rolled. Okay, and now we have to do the same thing for the defender. So we are going to pull that flow chart again on the solo table that I showed you. And it's the same thing. First thing you look at, do they have a leader or not? So it's engage without a leader. Again, same as the American side. And then is withdrawal plausible? So looking at this unit, the only way he can go, remember zones of control to your count, there's one place he can actually go, and that would be this wooded hex here. So yes, it is actually possible. So we're going to be back on table 1 again, which is that same table we were on. So let's roll a D8 again. So let's roll the D8 again and see what tactic that the defender is going to use. That is a 1, so that is withdrawal on the table. So let's grab the withdrawal card, and we'll get this out of the way because we don't need the dice tower right now. And so that's the withdrawal card. This is what the defender has pulled. And then you cross-reference that to get the result. So we're going to look at, and this is on the player's aid card as well. There's a tactical matrix. So you look at the column, you would look at the attacker is attack echelon, then read down to withdrawal for the defender. So it's a +1. And you can see that on these cards as well. So the attacker is this attack echelon, and then you would go down to withdrawal, and on the attack, that's a +1. So that's going to give another +1 to the die roll modifiers. So that's going to be actually a +3 now to the attacker when they go to roll their attack die. All right, so in quick summary, we are now on the close combat table. The odds are 4-1, and we're going to get a +3 to the die roll. We will be rolling this blue D6. Let's go ahead and get the dice tower back over because we're not quite done with that yet. See if I can get that on camera there. So rolling on the 4-1 column, let's see what we roll. That looks like a 2. That's not very good. So it's 2 plus 3 though, which is a 5. So look at your attack column. So 5, read across to the 4-1. It's a -/D result. All right, so that minus, the dash there, is a no effect. So you look, and it tells you on the combat chart, no effect for that. However, that D is going to be a disruption for that unit. So let's zoom back out now so we can see how this works out. All right, we are zoomed back out. I will get the dice tower out of the way again, and we'll get rid of these tactics cards that were used. So combat results, we'll go to the combat results in the rule book. This will tell us, and make sure you check the specific rule book to Eutaw Springs to see if there are any things that would affect combat, and we will talk about it in just 1 second. So this unit was disrupted, and it says that disrupted units, the owning player retreats the affected unit 3 hexes and places a disruption marker on the unit. And the other friendly units in close combat would probably have to make a morale check, so no, he's alone. But we do want to take a quick look at the Eutaw Springs rulebook to make sure nothing else applies to a disrupted result for the foraging party. So there is a section on the foraging party. And it tells us, so it does call out the parentheses on this unit. You probably noticed those. It tells you in 3.3 that the unit may not attack, can only defend, and may not move forward, can only retreat, and may not move until attacked. So it can move now, it has been attacked. It does have a zone of control. And also, this is what I was talking about as far as make sure you check this book. Causes no gain or loss of army morale points, worth no victory points, and does not cause the American player to gain momentum. So one of the things that would have been possible if this had been a normal unit would be when you look at the army morale adjustment here, that suffering a D would have caused a -1 to the British morale, but that's not the case here for a foraging party. So again, looking at the disruption, the owning player retreats the unit 3 hexes. So we're going to retreat this unit 1, 2, 3. So he's running back towards the British camp to alert the forces, and a disruption marker, if I can find one, is going to go on top of that unit. We will place that. Show that the foraging party is, of course, disrupted. Pretty poor attack on the Americans' part, if I do say so. And then looking a little forward on page 13, there are some more disrupted units information. They retreat 3 hexes, and then it tells us the effects of those things. It can only move 1 hex per turn, may not attack. So these are all things that would apply to a normal unit that was disrupted, and so nothing else to worry about there. We have completed this part of the battle. We've retreated our disrupted unit, and now we have to take our lead unit, which was the Lee unit, has to move forward into that hex. So Lee's going to go into the hex that was vacated. This Lee's Legions unit will go into the hex that was vacated. And then we get to choose whether or not to advance any of the other units that participated in that combat. So I do want to advance the unit that was with Lee's Legion, so we're going to move him forward as well. I'm not going to advance the Dragoons. I'm going to leave them right where they're at, because I may want to have them do something a bit different than come down this road like the rest of these units are doing. So that's going to end the combat phase. The next thing we would do is we would have the second player go, but again, we're in turn 2. The British will not get a turn, so it's strictly the Americans moving the first 2 turns. This is unfortunate for the Americans in that because they did not manage to wipe out that foraging party, then they were able to actually notify the British that the Americans were coming. So when we get to turn number 3 now, it looks like the British will have the initiative. And that you can find in the special rules for Eutaw Springs, and it will tell you that the initiative is determined by what happens with the foraging party. So if you look at the special rules 3.2, the turn 3 player order, conditional pending the outcome of close combat between the American forces and the British forces on turn 2, this turn. The combat result is no effect, or if the foraging party successfully retreats, British player will get the initiative on turn 3. Now, this I guess would account as a retreat. They were disrupted and moved back towards the line, so I'm going to think that's going to be considered a retreat. It doesn't say specifically in here anything else differently. Any other result, and the Americans get the initiative on turn 3 if the foraging party is overrun and the British are caught napping. And so we will continue along the sequence of play here. That was the end of turn segment. That's where we're at. Check for victory. So no, we're way too early for victory in this game. Last turn, the scenario determined a winner. Advance the game turn marker to the next turn. We actually never advanced it to turn 2, but we should have. So we're going to advance that to turn 3. When we come back, I will stop it again here. I just wanted to get through one battle. And when we come back, we will continue along to see what happens with the advance. So the British do not get a turn 1 or 2. This stays on, and that's how we're going to end this turn with our forces moving forward. When we come back, we of course will have turn 3. We've got a pretty good stack coming in, and that should be interesting. The British will get to move, so we'll get to see how they're going to react to this, and we will probably see combat again pretty soon. So I'm going to end it here. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Look forward to seeing you back here next time.